Contrary to popular belief, they don't give you any points for finishing the second to last lap in first place. Just ask Manu Gonzalez. Welcome back to Monday Morning MotoGP, and you guessed it, we are back from the summer break. We're talking about the British Grand Prix, the Silverstone Grand Prix. But before we get into everything that happened this past weekend, if you could please like, follow, share, subscribe, mash all the buttons so you get all the MotoGP you can handle. And just a fun fact, we usually respond to every single comment, and thank you to those who've been taking us up on that. We love hearing from you, even if you have a different opinion than I do. It's part of what makes me want to do this in the first place. So come on, head those comments this way. So we're going to start with the British Grand Prix, and as always this season we're going to talk about Moto3. Now, no Max Quiles, the dominant Moto3 champion. I don't think we can call him the champion yet, but the way he performed in the first half of the season, no one could touch this guy. And even after this week's last Grand Prix in Silverstone, he wasn't even there to compete because of an injury. He's still almost 90 points ahead of the chasing pack. Now, it doesn't mean he can be out very long. He does have to kind of come back, and no lead is ever safe. But what this really does mean is in MotoGP, Moto3, Moto2, motorcycle racing in general, nothing is guaranteed. It doesn't matter how far ahead of the pack you are at the beginning of the season. It only matters if you're leading the points at the end of the season, and no one is out of it until they're mathematically eliminated. Anything can happen in motorcycle racing. We've seen injuries, we've seen penalties, we've seen weather, we've seen everything get thrown in to disrupt a championship campaign. And somebody that looked like they were on top of the world, Marco Bezzecchi, looked like no one could beat them, Marco Bezzecchi. And suddenly they're no longer leading the championship. So for Max Quiles, he does have to kind of come back from that injury sooner rather than later. I think he will. I think he will come back strong. He will defend that points lead. But in the meantime, it was David Almanza and Carpe and Uriarte who unfortunately had that late crash. So he didn't make Max pay, but Almanza and Carpe made Max pay for missing out on the Grand Prix. And that's what you have to do when you are coming from behind in the championship. If that front leader guy is out, down on his luck, not having a good race, you need to capitalize. A little spoiler, we're going to talk about more about that when we get to the MotoGP boys in just a second. But hats off to David Almanza for a great win. Only his second win in Moto3 ever. Really good race. He looked like he was in control from the beginning. Had a great start. Too bad for the Green Power guys who both high-sided. The first one didn't look like it was his fault. It looked like he was helped into the gravel. And then the second one, big, massive high side. It looked like both those riders are okay. But we might be talking about some more injuries down the road for them. So in Moto2, what a fantastic race. I mean, the Moto2 race at Silverstone looked like a Moto3 race. Between 6-7 guys at one point, all fighting for the lead. It looked like any of them could win. And then we had Tony Arbolino crash out while he was fighting for the lead of that race. Super heartbroken for Tiger Tony because he hasn't had the form that we've expected him to have over the last few years. If you look back just a few years ago when we talked about Aaron Canet and Tony Arbolino, and these were the guys at the front of the championship who kind of had that one eye towards the MotoGP seat, and all of a sudden for both of them, it just form has evaporated. Hasn't been a good time. So I was really looking forward to seeing Arbolino finish the race well. Unfortunately, throws it down the road with a few laps to go. And then we have on the second to last lap, Manu Gonzalez stands up thinking he's won that race. Really aggressive move on that lap to take the lead into that final corner. Obviously, the reason he did it is he thought it was the last final corner of the race, and it wasn't. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen this. We've seen this over and over again at the smallest ranks of motorcycle racing all the way to the premier class. We saw Aleix Espargaro celebrating too early at Barcelona. We saw Alex Rins a few years ago in 2019 while he was racing Marc Marquez do that crazy around the outside move on Marc Marquez in the last corner because he thought that was the last lap of the race, and then realized, oh, I have one more lap to go. Maybe I should twist the wrist back on and actually go get this win on the next lap. and he did. So we've seen this happen, and I think it's for everyone racing out there, for everyone riding motorcycles, it's not over until you see that checkered flag. Yes, you have your pit boards. Yes, they have a lap counter downer. Now, sometimes the lap counter downer goes, 3, 2, 1, and then you cross the line on when the 1 goes to 0. Sometimes you do a full lap at 0. Every track is a little bit different. You don't stop racing until you see that checkered flag. I've seen this firsthand in a race that I was commentating on, where the race series threw out the white flag 1 lap too early. So all the riders went around, they saw the white flag, and they said, okay, this must be the last lap. They went around, and then by then the race organizers realized, oh wait, we threw the white flag too early. They went back out and threw the white flag again. And the 2 guys fighting for the lead in the race crossed the finish line and thought the race was over. The guy in third, he didn't see a checkered flag, kept his head down, kept moving forward, took the lead of the race, and never looked back. So you have to race through the checkered flag. Really unfortunate for Manu Gonzalez. Fortunate for the other riders that didn't clean themselves out when he let off the gas a little bit to celebrate. Really unfortunate. Looked like there was a coming together between him and I think Helgado. Really bent the crap out of his exhaust pipe. So every time he was turning to the right-hand corner, that thing was scraping across the tarmac. Glad he wasn't black flagged. Glad the race wasn't red flagged because of that. He was able to finish, I think, on 14th. Huge blow for him in the championship. Still leading, but he was looking for a whole heap of points, looking to win that Grand Prix and really separate himself from the rest of the pack. Instead, we have to say congratulations to Filip Salac and the American racing team for winning a race in Moto2. Hell of a job, Filip Salac. Didn't take his foot off the gas, kept on going even though all the craziness was happening right there in front of him. Sitting there, looking patient, looking really fast, and ends up taking home the win. So congratulations on that. So let's get into MotoGP in a weekend that this isn't something I get to say every single weekend. And we kind of knew this going in, but this is a week that Marc Marquez looked human. I know, gasp! Marc Marquez looked like a human being. When we've seen this before, we've seen Marc downplay his chances in a MotoGP race. Oh, this isn't a strong track of mine. And then he just goes out and sets the pole position, sets a lap record, rides at the front, makes everyone else look stupid. And we're like, wait, was he playing mind games or was he being truthful and surprised himself? And again, that was kind of the story going into Silverstone, that this isn't a track that Marc necessarily favors. He hasn't won here in a very long time. I think it was 2014 since Marc last won at Silverstone. So it's been a very, very big drought in the UK for Marc to win a race. He said himself this week was much more about defending points than trying to take points, trying to take it to his opposition. He was going to come out of there kind of playing defense and then look to Aragon to absolutely dominate and put everyone to shame. And the sprint, I mean, I've never seen Marc look that out of a sprint. He looked competitive for maybe 2 laps. It seemed like that tire went really, really early. He was a passenger on that bike, barely gets into the points, did not look fast or competitive at any moment in the sprint race. And I will say he looked better on Sunday. He knew that he had to manage the tire a little better at the front of the race. He knew that he had to take care of the bike to try to nurse it through the entire 20-lap Grand Prix. So he looked a little better, but at no point did he look like he was going to be challenging for the podium. I know he was up there in the beginning laps, but he did not look as competitive as his brother Alex. Side by side, Alex looked so much better than Marc this week. Side by side, Pedro Acosta looked better than Marc this week. Side by side, the Aprilias obviously all looked better than the Ducatis. Save maybe Alex Marquez, who looked pretty strong and was heckling Bez all the way to the end of the race. But Marc just didn't look comfortable. He said in the media that the tire just went for him in the sprint. It was a problem the Ducati was having, burning through its tires, having a massive drop really, really quick, and then it was just nurse at home mode. Seemed like all the Ducatis were kind of having that issue. Again, save Alex Marquez, who seemed, for whatever reason, to find a setting or find something in the right wrist that was able for him to let his tires last the entire race. But he didn't have as much at the end of the race as Bez, and Bez coming back from injury, it looked like Alex was going to make kind of light work of him, and Bez was able to defend all the way to the checkered flag. So maybe Alex also was playing at a little bit of a disadvantage with the machinery there as well. So I don't know the last time I looked at Marc and said, ooh, that week was rough for you, bro. And it really was. And I think that's okay, though, when you look at his results. Yes, the sprint race, he doesn't bring back a ton of points. Finishes inside the top 5 or 6 in the main race. I can't even remember where he finished now. He was that out of sync to me. But he does collect a few points and then lives to fight another day. Now, that's the thing that Marc is going to do. He's going to take these bad weeks And the bad weeks for him right now, as the rider he is today, look a lot more like 6th, 7th, 8th places than they do throwing it down the road trying to win at a track he has no business trying to win at. If you think back to the Honda days, Marc was a win it or bin it type rider. He won championships by finishing first or second in every race, and in any race he didn't win or finish second place, he was in the gravel trap. This feels like a little bit of a different Marc Marquez. He knew that it wasn't in the cards for him this weekend. He did kind of dial it back a little bit, tried to manage the pace, tried to fight for as many positions as he could, and ultimately walk away with something, score some sort of points. So that he can look at the next weekend and go, well, all I have to do now is win the sprint at Aragon, win the GP at Aragon, and I'm right back in it. And it's champions mentality. The champions pounce on these opportunities, right? So Marc's having a bad week. You look across at his championship rivals, who is going to take advantage of that? And Jorge Martin, leading the championship right now, said going into this round he didn't really feel like the championship leader. He didn't really have that great of a first half of the season, but everyone else kind of started to fall apart. Bez kind of fell apart. Ayagura's been super consistent, but it took him a little while to get going. And he had that mechanical DNF in Austin. And so none of the other riders, Digi's had his opportunities, hasn't been as consistent as he should have been. Same thing you can say about Alex, and the KTMs just have never really come to the party in a meaningful way. So Jorge Martin's sitting here looking at this opportunity, seeing how slow Marc was in the sprint, knowing that this is his opportunity to claw a whole bunch of points from his competitors. This is the champion's mentality. It is time to pounce right now while your competitors are licking their wounds. And licking their wounds, they kind of did. If you looked at the top three, Digia wasn't really competitive at the front this weekend. Marc for sure wasn't. And even though he was very strong in the sprint from the outset in the Grand Prix, with that problem with the ride height device both him and Martin had, it was only Martin that ended up being able to manage that on his way to the podium. It never felt like Ayagura really got his feet underneath him in this Grand Prix. He never looked comfortable, and then he ends up crashing out of the race, not pouncing on the opportunities. So when we say things like, well, here are the title contenders this year, is Ayagura a title contender? I think he's still there points-wise, but it's these types of performances that really tell you if someone is really a title contender. The way Jorge Martin really gutted it out, getting on the podium in the sprint win, Grand Prix second place. You see how Jorge Martin handled himself this weekend, knowing he was going to outscore Marc, outscore Bez, outscore outscore everybody he needed to. The only person that outscored him this weekend was Raul Fernandez, and that's the last guy he has to worry about in this championship. Now, maybe he has to worry about him going forward, but as it sits right now, that's the guy you can afford to give a few points to. He didn't want to give points to Marc with how hot Marc has been over the last month of the season. He didn't want to give points to Ayagura, who's been so hot over the last month of the season. But now it feels like the pressure is on Jorge Martin. He is the championship leader. He should feel like a championship leader. And after this performance this week, he's absolutely earned the right to call himself the championship leader. He pounced on the opportunity that was given. He took it to took it to Marc, and even took it to Bez. Bez had a great week. We're going to talk about that in a second. But Martin really showing his class and showing that why he is the favorite going forward. And this is a position that maybe Jorge Martin has never really found himself in before. When he was over at Pramac Ducati, he was never the championship, front runner. He would lead the championship for a day or two, and Pecco would overtake him. He won that championship by being an underdog. Now Jorge Martin, just like we said about Bez at the beginning of the season, on the factory Aprilia, which is considered the best bike this year on the grid, he's got the points lead. It's all on him. He's expected to bring this championship home. Just as Bez, when you're leading the championship as a factory Aprilia rider, when the Aprilia is running the way it is this season, you're expected to bring home the title. And so now Jorge Martin, he's in run mode and everyone else is chasing him. But hats off to how he performed this week, pouncing on those opportunities, really taking advantage of Marc's lack of speed and I's bad luck, putting himself into the gravel. And on the other side of the Aprilia garage, we have to talk about Marco Bezzecchi, because I think at the beginning of the season, everyone's like, this guy can make no mistakes, right? He was making mistakes, throwing some points away in the sprints, but in the main Grand Prix, he was leading every single lap of every single race, winning everything from last year all the way through the beginning of this year. I called him an alien. He looked absolutely unstoppable. And then the wheels started to come off a little bit. Made some mental errors, the incident with the marshal, we don't need to talk about it anymore, and then the injury right before the summer break that put him out of a Grand Prix. And now it was no points on a Sunday for almost 3 weeks, 3 rounds, almost 0 points that Marco Bezzecchi was scoring out of Sunday Grand Prix, you're not going to lead a championship very long by putting up zeros. So Bez was coming back from injury. Yes, we had the summer break to recover, but it's not that long to recover from collarbone and knee surgery. So we had to put together a performance this weekend that let everyone else know that he was back on the bike, that he was going to be there to fight. And he does that in a huge way with his one-off lap in practice, qualifying, does extremely well, going extremely fast. I mean, super gutsy with that one-off speed. We know the guy is fast, but where it really showed, yes, the sprint's another thing, but where Bez really showed his mettle was this week in the Grand Prix. 20 laps at Silverstone. There's not a lot of place to let rest. It's a very active track. It's very fast. It's flowing. It's heavy braking. It's turning. It's everything you could want in a racetrack, which means the riders work very hard. It's 20 laps, only 20 laps, not 30 laps like some of these shorter tracks, but it is a long 20 laps, and Bez absolutely gutted it out to get on that podium. And we saw him when he was fighting with Marc Marquez. They were kind of saying, here he is following Marc. Maybe he can get in, maybe he can't. That's where these guys were kind of Marc's lack of pace, Bez's lack of fitness. This might be where it's good enough for Bez to kind of just sit there and be happy with it. He wasn't happy with it. He goes ahead and makes the hard passes, gets through on Alex all the way into third place, and then defends Alex Marquez for the better part of the back half of that race. And if you saw how fast Alex was coming out of the corners, he was coming out very clean, and Bez still was able to keep him behind him on the straight. He wasn't getting slipstreams. He was very, very, very hard on the brakes, which if you're suffering with a collarbone injury and you're putting all of that force through your hands, through your shoulders, that's got to be gut-wrenching when you're dealing with a collarbone injury. He deals with it perfectly, completely gutted at the end of the race, completely emotionally spent, physically spent, psychologically spent. He gave everything he had, but I think it was really important for Bez to prove to himself and everyone else that he hasn't lost that edge he had at the beginning of the season. It's still the best bike on the grid. He's still one of the most talented riders on the grid. That combination has to bear fruit. And don't forget, with Jorge Martin leaving Aprilia next year and Pecco Bagnaia coming onto that team, Bez is still trying to cement himself as the number one rider over there. He loves Pecco. They're best friends in the world, but he does not want Pecco coming over with the attitude of, I'm a world champion, I won the championship twice, I'm coming over from Ducati, I'm the number one rider. Bez wants to cement his position as the number one rider there, and what better way to do that than win the championship against the other number one rider they currently have in Jorge Martin. So I think for Bez, he had a lot of pressure on himself this weekend to not only perform well, to score some points, to gut it out and just kind of get patted on the back with, hey, nice effort coming back from surgery, we'll keep getting stronger. I think he had some pressure on himself to exceed expectations this week. And if you ask me, he absolutely did. I don't know how he could have really done better. I mean, obviously the Aprilias were very fast. Fernandez took off in that Grand Prix, never looked back. He looked so freaking strong. No one was going to touch him. Martin looked very, very strong. And Bez being able to kind of keep pace with those points, not lose that much, move himself up in the standings just a bit, creeping back toward that title conversation. And then he's going to have a couple more weeks to recover before the next race. And he just needs to keep himself healthy and fast. And he's right back in this title mix. Him and Jorge Martin are going to exchange blows by the end of the season. And then throw in Marc Marquez at some tracks that Marc's a little better at, and we're going to have a nasty little three-way fight. Would love to see some other guys in there boxing it up with him too, to use all the boxing metaphors in the world. Speaking of the other guys, it shouldn't go without saying that Trackhouse Racing, Trackhouse Aprilia, is flat out outperforming the factory guys week to week. If you've looked over the last month of the season, you look at where Trackhouse is finishing races and where Aprilia is finishing races, as a team, Trackhouse is outperforming their factory counterparts. And a lot of people want to kind of poo-poo Ralph Fernandez. Well, yeah, I mean, he's fast this year, but he's on the best bike, so therefore it doesn't count. No, it absolutely counts. Because when you look across who he's beating the factory boys, and they're riding the exact same bike. Jorge Martin is riding an Aprilia. Marco Bezzecchi is riding an Aprilia. Ayagura is riding an Aprilia. Ralph Fernandez beat a lot of them. And he's been competitive at the front for over a month now. He's been overshadowed a little bit by Ayagura, who has had that win, finished in front of Fernandez a couple times when Fernandez has DNF'd, made mistakes. But when it comes to this Trackhouse duo, they could very well win the team championship outright. if you look across the MotoGP paddock, there is no 1-2 punch better than the Trackhouse guys right now. You look at Aprilia, now that Marco Bezzecchi can be back and Jorge Martinez back, they're maybe the best 1-2 punch on the grid, but we haven't seen them both really show up in a meaningful way week in and week out. And you look over at Ducati, Pecco's nowhere. Marc can ride at the front, Pecco's nowhere. You look at VR46, Digia can ride near the front, Morbidelli's nowhere. You look at KTM, we're not even to talk about Honda or Yamaha, they kind of all have one rider that can perform, another that can't. Trackhouse has got two riders that seemingly over the last month and a half of the season can't find themselves out of the top 6 unless the bike goes kaput or they make a massive mistake. So look at this actual Trackhouse team of being in the competition all the way out throughout the season. Right now, we can look at the points, whatever they are. I'm talking about by the end of the season. Trackhouse has a legitimate chance at being the team champions of MotoGP this year, which would be a huge feather in their cap for Justin Marks and Trackhouse, with both I and David Abrivio leaving the team at the end of the year, to be able to do it this year and say, look, we have put this program together from scratch just a few years ago, 2024. They haven't been around that long at all. And they're already making noise at the front of the championship. Yes, the Aprilia helps. Having a satellite bike that's the latest spec and that's running at the front and it's running great compared to the rest of the bikes, that absolutely helps. But the team is running well, it's managed well, it's organized well, and they've got two very, very fast racers who don't seem to have any ego in the garage when it comes to their relationship with each other. They just go out and ride. And whoever's faster, the other guy has to just take his hat off and say, hey, you were faster this week. We saw I go by Fernandez, give him a little shake of the head like, no, this is my corner. Don't turn in on me. I've earned this one. Fernandez backed off. I had it. You look this week, Fernandez was just a little bit faster, just a little bit better. Yes, he crashed out of the sprint, makes up for it in the main Grand Prix, and I kind of does the role reversal there. So both of you guys are so stinking fast, and I think Bez and Jorge have their work cut out for them staying in front of these guys, because it seems like over the last month, when you put up Trackhouse and Factory Aprilia right next to each other, the Trackhouse guys are just have that tiny bit of an edge. Now we'll see what happens as the bike gets better, as the bike, maybe new parts come in, which we may not see a whole lot of it this year with the regulations changing so much. I think kind of these bikes might sort of be what they are for the rest of the year. There'll be fine-tuning adjustments, but I don't think there's going to be massive amounts of new parts coming in from Italy and saying, hey, we're going to try brand new things with this bike. They're going to start looking toward next season. But when you look at these guys, this is going to be a really interesting battle for the team's championship, and not one we can say over the last few years has been all that competitive. It's kind of been kind of a foregone conclusion. Whoever wins the championship is also winning the team's championship, because no other team is really stepping up in a big way. And this year might be a little closer than we have seen in the past. So I want to talk about something else that we brought up kind of before summer break, was the KTM and its horrible engine. KTM and the ever-quitting, ever-stopping KTM engine that has been plaguing every single rider in MotoGP, including Alex Marquez, who ran to the back of one, Fabio Di Giannantonio, who had to avoid the flying pieces of Alex Marquez's bike because of that. And it seemed like on a weekly basis, these KTMs were just stopping. And then we heard before the summer break that KTM boss wanted permission to open up the sealed engines to fix a problem, because they did indeed find a problem in the interior of their engine that was not going to be fixed unless they were allowed to unseal the engines that were currently homologated for this season. Now, this isn't unprecedented. I think Yamaha a handful of years ago, did the same thing, where they had a part manufacturer had changed the specs on something and it was causing problems in their engine. They were allowed to unseal the engine, fix that tiny valve problem, and then reseal the engine under the supervision of the MotoGP technical folks. Well, before the summer break, the rest of the manufacturers just weren't really in the mood of hearing KTM's, well, we want to go and fix our engines. They weren't really hearing it. Only Aprilia had said, yeah, it was okay. Well, now it turns out that KTM will be allowed, before the next Grand Prix, I believe the week before Aragon, KTM will be allowed to go in there, unseal those remaining engines they have for MotoGP, make the fix that they have now found, and hopefully get rid of these engine gremlins that have been plaguing them all season long. So the rest of the manufacturers have agreed it is okay for them to do this. They'll have IRTA officials, MotoGP officials supervising this, so they know exactly what is being installed, exactly what's cataloged, so that everyone knows exactly what happened to the engine, and that way there's no funny business with trying to squeak out a few more horsepower for their lack of performance. I don't even think it's performance at this point. The rest of the manufacturers apparently just said, hey, it's not unsafe. It's what I've been saying for months. This bike is not safe to be on the MotoGP grid. Please, please fix your house so the rest of us don't crash into you anymore. So I think that's actually a very smart thing on MotoGP. I don't know what the holdup was before the summer break. If the rest of the manufacturers just wanted KTM, maybe it's a little gamesmanship, wanted them to have to think about what they've done over the summer and not be able to come right back in and have a chance to, have that engine sealed and then do some testing with the changes to the engine. Whatever it was, whatever gamesmanship's going on, whatever delay is, I think we finally reached what needed to happen, which is this problem getting fixed. So thank you, everyone in MotoGP. Thank you, manufacturers, for having a little common sense. Yes, it's a competition, but also, let's not be daft about things. So lastly, I want to talk about Honda, because it seemed like Honda, in the battle of the Japanese manufacturers who've seemed to be on the back foot ever since the COVID pandemic, ever since we've come back from the shutdowns that really, really hit Japan really hard, and also the resurgence of the European manufacturers, with Ducati absolutely being dominant, KTM starting to make progress, and Aprilia now obviously making progress from being the worst bike on the grid all the way to the best. The Japanese manufacturers have seemingly fallen behind, and there's been a lot of press about what they're doing, how much money they're throwing at it, how much engineers they're throwing at it, bringing in European engineers, bringing in new minds, new systems, new technical people, all sorts of things to try to get the Japanese manufacturers back to the front. And it looked like from the end of last year to the beginning of this year, more last year than this year, but it looked like Honda was making some progress, where Yamaha, having to just switch their whole program over to this V4, we knew that was going to be a slog. We knew that was never going to be an instant fix. They were going to have a very, very uphill battle, and I said it all year. I think they have one eye to 2027, that this bike is sort of a mini prototype to work on the bike for next year. They were never going to be competitive with that brand new V4 right now. But Honda did kind of look competitive. We saw Luca Marini, we saw Joan Mir, we saw Johan Zarco on podiums and winning races last year. We saw flashes of brilliance this year from Diogo Moreira. It looked like Honda was starting to kind of put their foothold back in the MotoGP championship. Were they up there with the likes of Aprilia and Ducati? Absolutely not. From race to race, it felt like maybe they could run with one or the two of the slowest Ducatis, but it never felt like they were going to be a front runner. But it did look like they were closing the gap to KTM. It did feel like they were closing the gap on certain one-lap speed at certain tracks. And for some reason, it feels like that progress has absolutely hit a wall. Mir, once again, can't stay on a MotoGP bike. Him and that Honda, I wish they would just cut him halfway through the season and say, you know what, go home, take a rest. You have a ride. I believe he's riding at Gresini next year. You have a ride in it for next year. Just go train. We don't want to see you fall off our bike anymore, because it's gotten to the point where it is comical. Sometimes, yes, he's helped off the bike by another rider, not exactly his fault, but my goodness, this guy can't stay up. I don't know how many DNFs. I don't even want to count. The number is embarrassing. And then Luca Marini doesn't seem to be anywhere. Can't get out of Q1, can't get into the top 10 in any meaningful way. If he's getting in the top 10, it's because riders are crashing out in front of him, or something weird has happened. He isn't racing forward in race weekends. He's slow, he's steady, but the optimum word is slow. And there just hasn't really been any progress out of Honda. We haven't seen what Johan Zarco can do on the bike. Obviously, he's been out with injury, but it doesn't really feel like Honda has made any inroads in the last half of the season. Like, if I were to give Honda a grade like I did last year for the first half of the season, I mean, their grade is right there with Yamaha. Except I don't expect anything out of Yamaha this season. So having Honda in that same boat is super, super insulting. I'm telling you right now, it's not a good place that Honda is in, especially when your top rider just can't even make it a lap around the track. I have no idea. I mean, maybe it's just they see something in him. He's a former world champion. He's won MotoGP races, and so maybe you just don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that's what Gresini is looking over, going, hey, for a bargain, we can get Mir over here that's won a MotoGP championship. We have the Ducati. He's not going to have to ride a Honda. We still have faith that he's fast. He's shown flashes of brilliance. But if I was in their shoes, I would be so nervous about having this guy ride on your team. He just can't stay up on the Honda. Now, he is the only one riding the Honda with any pace. Maybe that's what it has to do with. Marini, Moreira, Kyle Crutchlow for sure aren't riding that bike with the same pace Mir is. But dude, I mean, just ride it at a little bit slower pace and finish races. Get some laps, get some data. Let Honda know anything about what's going on with their bike. But how are you getting data when every single race you're on the freaking floor? So it does feel like the whole program itself is kind of gone the same way. It doesn't feel like anything is in an upward trajectory. It really feels like they're treading water. Now, maybe that is because they just gave up the GOAT completely and said, hey, we are focusing on the next regulations. We're looking at the 850cc engine. We're not giving anything new to this project. This project is where it is. Race what you got, boys. Do the best you can. And so maybe it's no hard, no foul. I don't know. I'm not in those meetings. I'm not there sitting next to Joan Mir in the meeting saying, hey, it's okay if you throw it down the road. We're not really looking to get any data that's meaningful out of this bike anyway. The bike has half a season left and we'll never see it again. We're focused on the future, so you can be too. I don't know if those are the conversations, but I have been surprised at how fast Honda's progress has stalled. And also looking at Fabio Quartararo, he had no choice. He had to leave Yamaha. I think just that relationship has kind of met its end. I think he has a lot of love for Yamaha. They brought him into the MotoGP paddock. They gave him that factory seat over Valentino Rossi, which was a hard thing to do, basically asking a legend to take a step back to Petronas Yamaha and bring in this young gun so that he could be the factory rider in the future. He has won a world championship with them. It's been a very, very good partnership. But I think for everyone's sanity, including the fans at home, we need to see Fabio Quartararo on a different bike. My concern now is, can Honda give him a bike that is worthy of his talent? Or is he just going to waste the next 2 years on another manufacturer that is going to fill him with promises and then under freaking deliver? Only time will tell. Well, that does it for this week on Monday Morning MotoGP. And like I said, make sure you're following and mashing all the buttons and all that good stuff. Also, check us all out over at Throttle Sauce. We've got brand new stuff up, including our weekly news segment, All the Sauce. Make sure you're checking that out as well. And yeah, until next time, when we talk about the Aragon GP, we'll see you later.